Hello, and apologies for our slightly late start, but welcome and good evening, and thank you for joining me this evening for this virtual public meeting to discuss drug dealing and drug use in Leyton. I'm very grateful to officers from the Council, the Metropolitan Police, Chain Grow Live, and the housing station L&Q for being here to discuss this issue. We'll also be joined by our local MP, John Cryer, who's just finishing up another meeting. But first of all, I want to acknowledge the scale of the concern and distress caused by acute drug issues in Leyton. As a Grove Green councillor and Leyton resident, I see the issues firsthand. It's important that we not only tackle it from every angle, but also communicate and explain what we are doing and have a two-way dialogue about your feedback, challenges, and questions. The council and partners participated in 2 public meetings last year, and there have been further opportunities to participate in police ward panels and walks and talks with officers on the ground. We've also sought to communicate all that we do via Waltham Forest News, our community safety newsletter, and via social media. Recognising the scale of concern, we also leafleted every household to clarify how to report concerns and seek help. Your reports are absolutely critical in giving us the intelligence to enforce against criminals and support the vulnerable, and to ensure that we have an accurate picture of our impact and how the problem is evolving. In just a moment, I'll pass over to officers to set out the approach we have taken and the impact we have had. But before I do, I just wanted to flag up a few things. Your microphone has automatically been muted and your video turned off. There is no way any other participant can identify you. You can ask questions throughout. These will be moderated by the facilitator and will be answered at the end. If we can't answer a question or can't get through all of the questions, we will address these in writing afterwards. I recognise that we won't be able to cover everything tonight. In the slides, it will reiterate how to report issues and raise support, and highlight a number of ways in which you can meet officers face-to-face at similar events. Now, if I can pass over to Dan Graves from the Council, who, with other colleagues, will highlight the range of work underway.
Thank you very much, Councillor Limbergy. So like Councillor Limbergy, I'd like to start by acknowledging the acute distress that drug dealing and drug use has caused for many residents in Leyton. I've seen firsthand the blight that drug misuse has had on your families and neighbourhoods. It's a top priority for me, for the Council and across our partnership, and you can be absolutely guaranteed of our determination to make a difference. This evening, I'm going to set the scene by describing our understanding of drugs misuse issues in Leyton and the harms they've caused. I'm going to outline the problem-solving approach we've taken to drug misuse, tackling it from every angle, and we're also going to describe some of the impact that we've had through the work that we've done. My colleagues from across the partnership will then say in a bit more detail the work they are doing before opening up to questions. So just in terms of setting the scene, although there have been issues with drug dealing and drug use in Leyton over a number of years, the issue worsened dramatically in the late summer and early autumn last year. This increase happened very quickly. We saw a 5-fold increase in drug reports to the council and police between September and January. And this was disproportionate to the changes happening elsewhere, and the rate of drug-related issues was amongst the highest in London at its peak. And although the whole of Leyton was affected to some extent, the heat maps here show that the issues were highly concentrated in a small number of streets and problematic premises. It's also worth noting we believe the acute worsening of drug-related issues also drove an increase in the sorts of acquisitive crime, which is often drug-driven, so snatch theft, robbery, burglary, and theft from a car. And we saw a 60% increase over the period. So it was an extremely challenging situation that we saw unfolding. Moving on to the next slide, I mean, you don't need me to tell you the nuisance, alarm, distress that these open drug scenes caused to you as residents. We heard your stories loud and clear at the 2 previous public meetings, your complaints to us, and in social media coverage. And I can only imagine how it must feel to have had open drug dealing, open drug use on your streets. And I've met a number of residents who've described the impact of the violence, intimidation, and the unpleasantness of the debris and human waste which is left by in the wake of some of this behaviour. So we're very much determined to tackle it. And moving on to the next slide, it's for that reason we quickly stood up a task force to ensure that the whole council is behind the effort to tackle drugs in Leyton, and that we're working hand in hand with colleagues right the way across our drugs partnership. And we are tackling drug dealing and drug use from every angle. Through stronger enforcement from the police and the council. And my colleague Rob Skingle will talk more about our focus on the people and the premises causing greatest harm and the range of tools we're using to disrupt criminals and keep them off the streets. We've also stood up a bespoke public health response, which takes services, substance misuse services, to vulnerable users and makes it easier and quicker to access help. And my colleague Tom Lydiot from Change Grow Live will describe the extensive outreach work done by substance misuse workers, enabling assessments to happen just around the corner and same-day prescribing for medications. We've also taken an approach of designing out crime through environmental improvements, things like cutting back vegetation in planters, alleyways and parks, putting up CCTV, dealing with waste and hygiene issues really swiftly and dealing with disrepair. And my colleagues Paul and Annette are going to talk a bit more about the work they've done to improve the public realm in Leyton and also around social housing estates. Moving on to the next slide, there are some numbers here about the impact we've had since last September. So we've installed 4 new redeployable CCTV cameras in hotspots and ensured that these are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've also seen over 70 arrests related to drugs markets. We've secured 6 premises closure orders. We're pursuing injunctions against highest harm individuals, and we've seen substance misuse workers undertake over 250 outreach visits, resulting in over 20 successful referrals into structured treatment. At every turn, we've sought to communicate and to engage, publicising our work across the police and across council channels. We've also hosted walk and talks so officers can experience the issues that residents face directly and talk face to face about how they can be resolved. And we've also put a leaflet through every door, as Kevin says, flagging how you can report issues to the police and to the council and how you can get support to vulnerable people. As Kevin said, I can't emphasise enough the importance of residents reporting issues and engaging with us. It's only through your reports that we'll really be able to understand where the hotspots are, how the problems are changing, and also to get invaluable intelligence to directly disrupt drug dealing. We're determined to keep up the momentum on this work and our conversations with you. And I'll highlight at the end some opportunities to get involved more at the back end of the slide pack. Moving on to the next slide, which talks about impact. We've seen a significant fall since the peak of reports in drug-related issues to police and the council back in September, a fall of around 80%. We've also seen fairly sharp falls in drug-driven acquisitive crime over the same period, and a significant fall in the number of incidents picked up by our CCTV camera operators who've been asked to focus on this area. Having said all of that, we can't be complacent. We know that there are still issues with problematic premises and individuals, and we're still trying to disrupt those day in, day out. We also recognise that some of these issues are entrenched and will require a sustained effort over a period of time. And we also know there are risks of some of the people and issues emerging in surrounding areas. So we will maintain our focus on tackling drug dealing in and around Leyton, closely tracking what's happening and adapting our approach as we go. So I'm going to pass on now, I think, to my colleague Rob Skingle from the Metropolitan Police.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Like Dan has said, my name is Rob Skingle. I'm the inspector who is the operational tactical lead for the drug response to Leyton. Having spoken to a number of residents, I too can appreciate the concerns and distress that drug use in Leyton and Grove Green has caused you as residents. But what has become acutely obvious is that we can't rely on police enforcement alone, which is why, as a combined partnership, we've pulled our resources together, looking at local authority resources, Metropolitan Police, local and central units, but also really linking with the members of the public to actually understand the problem and understand the concerns that you face. In terms of policing, our tactics have a wide range, which include a number of high visibility patrols alongside covert policing strategies, supported by centralised units looking at design out crime site visits, etc. Since our last meeting, we have had tactical reviews in terms of our winter focus, which has focused significantly on identifying those individuals and problematic premises, which we've had time to allow us to gather that intel throughout the summer and identify the key problems to focus on. As you can see on the slide, we have a top 5 focus at the moment. I won't read through every single piece of data on there. However, we look at the top 5 criminal offenders, top 5 ASB offenders, problematic premises and hotspot locations, with a view of providing a kind of holistic approach to problem solving, utilising ASB legislations, looking at antisocial behaviour warnings, community protection warnings, and closure orders, for instance. On the slide there, some of the eager-eyed of you may have noticed that some of those numbers don't add up in terms of those imprisoned awaiting trial, etc. Just to reassure you all, these are a rolling top 5. So if we have a positive result where somebody is imprisoned or provided a conditional discharge, for instance, we don't just stop there. We continue looking at the next people involved that we can target, and the next people that we can make sure we disrupt as best possible. I'd like to just come on to the ASB outcomes on that slide. This isn't the total number of ASB warnings across this piece of work. This specifically relates to the top 5 that are being targeted at the time. And something that has changed significantly over time is our approach to ASB warnings and community protection notices. Previously, they've been very much around prevention of action, whereas now it also includes a positive requirement, which I'm sure my colleague Tom Lydiate will give more information on later. But essentially, that means that those that we can identify as causing regular problems in terms of ASB or crime, we can provide a requirement for them to seek treatment and assessment within one of the local treatment centres, and they've been provided by CGL. Community behaviour orders are something that the court can issue on conviction, and we're ensuring that those that are convicted are handed community behaviour orders for that ongoing piece, so we can make sure that they don't continue to cause you as a resident further concerns. There are some challenges in terms of securing those convictions, which obviously cause some residents concern when they see the same people out and about day in, day out, where they have raised that these people are problematic and where these people have previously been arrested. They're often a result of lengthy processes within the court systems and also with complex investigations that the police are running. The closure orders I mentioned previously look at making sure that vulnerable people within their premises aren't exploited, and they heavily feature in our tactical plan to make sure regularly that these premises are not being used by drug users and not having drug dealers utilising spaces where vulnerable people live, which, as mentioned previously, has been 126 enforcement visits on these addresses so far. I'd just like to reiterate and thank residents really who continue to provide support to the partnership, but also those who have provided us with valuable intelligence through their reports. I would encourage everyone to continue reporting, as it's how we gather our best intelligence, and the tactics moving forward will continue to develop. These top 5 generally came about as a result of the high visibility patrols and the weather becoming worse over the winter months, and the change in focus to make sure that we were heavily looking at those premises. But we are now planning for our summer response with a higher emphasis on visibility and open spaces. I'll now just hand over to, I think it's Tom next.
Actually, I think whilst Tom comes on, should we move to John Stokes? Are you there? Actually, we'll come to John and Tom in a second. Paul, can you come in?
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, so my name's Paul Tickner. I look after our neighbourhoods team. If we could go to the first slide, please. So we have a team of neighbourhood officers that are out there 7 days a week. They currently deal with enviro crimes. They're out there carrying out street inspections. One of the biggest issues that was raised was around foliage and overgrown foliage in some of our parks and some of our planters. So we've been working with a number of different people. We managed to get some funding to get some new planting to go in. We've been working with community payback to remove vegetation from particularly Sidmouth Park and Coronation Gardens. We've been particularly targeting the hotspot locations where we was having problems with people urinating in the street. So we've been doing a lot of jet washing and disinfecting of different locations on a regular basis. We've been particularly targeting our fly tipping hotspots in the Wald or in Leyton as well. Also trying to target graffiti removal, getting it removed quicker. We've worked with Leyton Mills to get them to remove their graffiti from their site. They've been putting new litter bins, improved the seating in the area. And one of the other thing is the removal of the signs. The cash for cars was clearly an issue in the ward. So we've been particularly targeting that and removing them when they've been going up. Some of the planting that we've been doing in some of the planters, we're planting smaller shrubs that don't grow as high, so not going to cause an obstruction. We did quite a lot of this work towards the end of the year, and now the planting season's back up. We will continue that, working on the beds. Some of the beds are now being adopted by residents in the area, which is a real great thing, because we find when residents adopt the planters, there's less likely that people are going to dump rubbish in them and drop their litter in them, especially when you get signs in saying that residents are looking after these. So that's something else. But I mentioned community payback, and they are a great resource that we have and we use and we're using to target particular locations. If any residents do have any particular locations that they think it would be good to get community payback, whether it's painting walls or planting up areas or cleaning, general cleaning, you can put some questions in the chat and hopefully we'll be able to arrange that. Onto the next person. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for this. If we can go to Tom from Change, Grow, Live. Tom, do you want to sort of tell us some of the work that you're doing in Change, Grow, Live about substance misuse and how you work in the community?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties there.
That's all right.
Thank you. My name's Tom Liddy. I'm the Services Manager for CGL, which is Change, Grow, Live, the Drug and Alcohol team. We've been working really closely and really kind of embedded within the partnership with local authority, with police, with health and social care providers, the ASB teams, and with police colleagues, to try and do our bit in terms of responding to the issues down in Leyton. I was at the public meeting before Christmas and was heartened to acknowledge really that residents were expressing concern for people that were in some way kind of caught up in the issues around drug misuse and what had befallen them to land in that situation. Again, we've been supported massively by our partners, particularly in Olhid, to put an outreach team in Leyton. We've been down there 3 days a week, Monday to Friday, as well as weekends up to Christmas. And during that time, we've been able to do over 300 outreach visits. We've had 150 engagements. And as a result of that, we've been able to engage with 147 people out on the streets in Leyton. Primary focus has been Coronation Gardens, which was obviously a massive part of the footprint in the area, as well as the retail park up at Asda and just up and down the high road. amongst other places. One of the things that we initiated in response to this, alongside the threat from synthetic opioids, nitazenes in particular, which is 100 times stronger than heroin, so very, very dangerous stuff. We've been able to introduce rapid prescribing, which means same-day prescribing. So often for this group of service users, the wait and the delay and the waiting list to get in, to get assessed, to see a doctor, to start a prescription can be a block and a barrier. The service users will start their treatment journey, but they would fall off the treatment journey before they manage to start their prescription for methadone and buprenorphine. So we've overcome that by offering same-day prescribing, which is quite a radical and quite new initiative. And as a result of that, we've had 23 new referrals from the 150 engagements, 13 have completed assessments, and 9 have gone on to start opiate substitute treatment as a protective measure and as a motivational tool. So we've also been able to issue a high volume and number of naloxone kits. These are kind of EpiPen type medications that we give out to service users and to colleagues within the partnership that reverse the effects of potentially lethal opiate overdose, which is a great health measure. I think one of the other things that's particularly exciting at the moment is the partnership work with police, ASB teams, with other housing and social care providers around the community protection warnings and the community protection notices. And as Inspector Skingle alluded to, initiating more positive requirements, so as well as instructions to prevent certain behaviours, instructions to encourage positive behaviours, namely to engage in treatment. So anybody who's issued with that type of a positive requirement will need to come and engage in 6 drug and alcohol awareness training sessions. So again, we're hoping that will improve engagement from within this cohort. We offer full access to one-to-ones, to groups, to counselling for those that need it, and also access to inpatient detox and rehab. So whilst the initial engagement has been really positive, we do appreciate that just somebody getting on a methadone prescription doesn't necessarily mean they won't still be active in the area. We do feel that we've made some quite positive steps in terms of trying to reach out and provide care for those caught up in this unfortunate situation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Tom. That's good. Thanks very much, Tom. So we'll just move on now to Annette, if you're there from L&Q. If not, maybe Dan, do you want to sort of say a few more words?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kevin. So the slides you've got up here at the moment are some improvements made as a result of estate inspections and walk and talks done at Thornhill Gardens. As you can see, a range of steps have been taken to cut back vegetation, improve the look and feel, deal with disrepair, and designing out crime measures to make it harder for people to use common parts or public spaces for drug dealing and drug misuse. And that's been done very much in partnership with London and Quadrant. And I think we've had some technical difficulties which have prevented my colleague Annette from joining us this evening. We're just going to move on now to the next slide, which shows some dates. So we hope very much that tonight will be the start of a conversation, and there are further opportunities to talk to the council, to the police and to housing associations through a range of walk and talks, which will enable you to interact directly with officers and raise concerns that you think need to be addressed. There will also be further engagement on an ongoing basis through the police ward panels in Leyton and Grove Green. The Grove Green ward panel meeting has already been diarised, and the Leyton ward panel meeting will be diarised shortly. So we'll be putting the details of these in the chat and making sure that we publicise them widely. Moving on to the next slide, here is the leaflet that we posted through Every Door in Leyton. I hope you received it. This sets out the ways for reporting drug dealing and drug use to the police, and also the importance of flagging this to the council where there's nuisance associated with drug use, whether that's congregation, whether that's aggressive begging. And it also sets out ways to seek support and advice either for yourself or members of your family relating to substance misuse, or seek help for a vulnerable user in the community. And again, we'll be publicising these kind of mechanisms for getting support going forward. So that's all I wanted to say this evening. Back to you, Kevin.
Thanks very much, Dan. I know that John Cry's joined us as well. And John, so I'm Kevin for Community Safety as well as being a Grove Green councillor, and I work very closely with John, who is our MP, who also lobbies ministers and the Home Office as well in terms of the issue. John, do you want to sort of tell us a little bit about some of the work that you're doing and that you're picking up as well, and some of the stuff that you've been seeing on the ground in terms of Leyton?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, and thanks to the police and the council for organising this meeting. I know, a few months ago we had a few face-to-face meetings in Leyton about the same issues. Last summer, well, I think everybody will remember last summer we had dealing issues and using issues which were very, very serious. I remember going around local schools, playgroups, nurseries, businesses, talking to a lot of residents, and without a shadow of a doubt, it wasn't embroidered. It really was a serious, very, very serious issue. That led to a council and police operation, which, from my observation, had an effect. I saw the consequences of it, and on a couple of occasions, I saw people getting arrested for drugs offences. The level of activity more than seemed to come down. I think it did come down. As we're getting into the warmer weather, obviously there's a danger that it might start to come back because it tends to peak in the warmer weather in the spring and summer months. So we have to be ready for that. Kevin mentioned lobbying ministers. There's a new fund been announced. It was only announced a couple of weeks ago by the Home Office, and it's not clear exactly how it will work, but it's there to be, it seems that it's there to be bid for. And I've written to the Home Secretary. As I say, the announcement was only made a short time ago. It's about accessing resources for dealing with antisocial behaviour, and drugs is part of that. And it's £66 million fund. I've just written to the Home Secretary saying, how do we get access to this? How do we get these resources into our community? There are a couple of other things that I want to mention as well. The criminal justice bill's just gone through Parliament. I don't know if it's got royal assent yet, but it's just gone through Parliament. That makes one of the crucial aspects of this, which is closing down premises, which is a matter for the council. I know the council, Kevin and the council, have closed down premises. Criminal justice bill should make that slightly easier from now on. So that bit's going to be easier. One issue that has been bugging me a lot has been cuckooing, because from what I've seen, a lot of the problems we're getting, or certainly some of them, have arisen from cases of cuckooing. And that's not just in Leyton. I mean, over in Can Hall, I've been dealing with a really, really serious issue, really nasty case of cuckooing. Basically, we put down an amendment to the Criminal Justice Bill, which would have made cuckooing a specific criminal offence. It wasn't accepted by the government. I'm hoping that at some point in the future that might change and it might become a specific offence, because I think it would make, in cases like that, where a house has been taken over by dealers, it'd make it easier for the police and the council to address those sorts of cases where you've got clear instances of cuckooing going on. There's just one more thing that I want to mention briefly, and this might seem less important, but it actually matters quite a lot. And that is clearing away cover for dealing and using. And certainly Sidmouth Park and Coronation Gardens, I mean, I've witnessed a number of cases. In Sidmouth Park, I've sort of seen indications that it's going on. And in both cases, you've got foliage which hasn't been removed, and it provides cover for dealers and users. The comment about removing the foliage and making it easier to spot what's going on will remove some of that cover. There are other elements as well, which are being done or need to be done. But I think that's one that particularly springs to mind because of what I've witnessed. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, John. Thanks for that. There's a number of questions that have come through, so please keep your questions coming in. I mean, the first question that I think, that's on everyone's mind is actually about the cold weather and the warmer weather. Is the actual reduction in crime or reduction of the issue due to the cold weather in the winter? Rob, I think that's probably a question. No, for actually Dan. Dan might be a question for you to sort of to comment on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. So it's true that reported drug-related antisocial behaviour is typically lower in the winter months and higher in the summer and early autumn. And over the last 3 years, the peak months have been in July, August and September. However, the reduction we saw in Leyton between October and January was much greater than the seasonal fall we saw in the rest of the borough. Taking drug-related council and ASB and police calls together, there was around an 80% fall between October and January, compared to a 9% decrease in the rest of the borough. So what we've achieved is not just been through seasonal effects. Having said that, we are vigilant as we come into the warmer months. We will be exploring ways of stepping up our response through targeted patrols in hotspots, both from police, the council, and our commission partner, Park Guard, and we'll explore also opportunities of doing kind of further outreach through Change, Grow, Live. So I recognise the challenge, and it's one we're very alive to.
Well, thanks, Dan. So there are other questions as well to do with abstractions and about police being off the street and Leyton visible presence. Rob, would you be able to sort of come in and just talk a little bit about policing in Leyton and Grove Green, and also how abstractions work?
Yeah, certainly. So I think one of the questions was really around why we see a lot more police around for like Leyton Orient matches, for instance. I think what is really key here is that the police response to this issue has been unprecedented, really. If you look at the numbers of patrols of 1,747 high vis patrols alongside central units and covert activity, although not all policing is high vis, the number of resources that have been put into Leyton really does kind of show that Leyton is being seen as 100% is being seen as a command unit priority, and we've got the backing from our senior leaders locally and into commanders to back that. So in terms of abstractions, the abstractions were the worst they've been over the summer last year. But it has forced a corporate change into not just including those from frontline police who've been abstracted into kind of central London protests or central London events, which ultimately has seen a huge reduction in the abstractions that frontline officers and neighbourhood officers now face. It's also key to mention that the abstractions aren't a long-term piece. They're a short-term, one-day aid provided to other units, maybe in central London or elsewhere, wherever the risk dictates. But otherwise, they are present on the wards, dealing with what they should be. And like I said, although some of it may not be obvious, it may not be high visibility, it is still relevant into the overall cause.
Thanks, Rob. We've got a question about a lot of dealings happen from cars on the road. Have any of the CCTV cameras helped the police take any of these cars off the road? I mean, we have in the borough 900 fixed CCTV cameras. We've got 41 movable cameras. So we've got to compared to other boroughs, we've got a lot of like CCTV resource. But how has that helped in terms of spotting cars?
Yeah, so every car or every individual that is reported to us is logged in our intelligence systems. We do have some new computer software that helps us link all those together, but generally it is all forming one big picture in terms of the key players, the people that we need to focus on. It is all relevant. So from the CCTV it's being recorded, and also from residents' complaints or information provided.
Thanks, Rob, on this. So, I mean, one of the things that residents do sort of ask about is about vulnerable drug users being placed in hostels and giving them benefits in cash. Is this fueling the issue? Is this something maybe Dan or Tom can sort of answer?
Thanks very much, Kevin. So I can address that issue. So we are aware of concerns about a small number of premises that provide supported housing to vulnerable drug users. And although these premises are not regulated by the council, in each case where we've received concerns about antisocial behaviour around them, the council has undertaken visits and liaised with care coordinators and the management of the premises. In each case, we're confident that the premises were being managed appropriately, and there has been engagement with ASB to deal with the ASB team to deal with any ASB issues, and also proactive intervention from Change, Grow, Live, our substance misuse service. Obviously, where appropriate and support isn't being taken up or problems persist, enforcement action has been taken by the ASB team. I would say, though, it's very unlikely that vulnerable drug users being put into supported living has been a key driver of the issue. The number and mix of residents in those types of accommodation has been pretty stable across the period. So I don't think that's the explanation for what has driven it. Tom, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add on that.
No, I can't really add too much more. That was a comprehensive picture, and we work closely with hostels and supported living in the area to provide care and support. And what we find is when people are in those settings, they're much easier to manage because we can kind of effectively keep our eye on them. It's deemed to be a protective factor.
Thanks, Tom. A related question is about some of the drug dealers, and some of them have been very young. So how do we ensure that they're diverse away from crime and safeguarded? I think this is something maybe Dan can come in on that, and Tom, you can sort of say a few words around that as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. I think this is a question that a number of residents have raised with us, and it showed through our casework that there are significant patterns of young people among the drug dealers. So for every child who's arrested, we are really working closely with partners to make sure that relevant safeguarding processes are followed. So wherever there's an arrest, we make a referral into the multi-agency safeguarding hub and make sure that relevant referrals are made so that we can support that young person and make sure wherever we can, we exit them from that cycle of violence and exploitation. We're also keen to make sure that people aren't exploited in the first place. So we are increasing our youth provision at Leyton area, offering mentoring for young people aged 16 to 25. We're getting weekly patrols from street base to ensure that young people, there's engagement with young people. And we're also doing exploitation awareness workshops with parents. So we're both tackling the safeguarding challenges around those who are arrested for drug dealing, but equally trying to act early to make sure that fewer young people are brought into that pattern of behaviour, and wherever we can, they're diverted out of it.
Thanks, Dan. I think Rob also you'd like to sort of come in on this question.
Yeah, thank you. It was just to mention some other work that's going on is looking at where youth specifically are kind of cared for, if that makes sense. So looking at both schools and the engagement done with the schools officers within the schools. Again, looking at that vulnerability, policing, and exploitation, but also looking at parent workshops, educating parents around the risks and concerns, and really kind of showing them the early identifying features of what exploitation looks like and where they can gain support. Alongside that comes we run a diversion panel into our youth engagement officers. So those that are repeatedly coming to notice for ASB or are provided with a low level reprimand in terms of drug possession, for instance, and then also provided diversionary support. So just a few things that the police do there.
Thanks, Rob. A follow-up question really from that. So there's are the police prosecuting drug dealing or treating it as ASB? And sometimes residents do see the same drug dealers coming on the streets yet again after being arrested. Could you sort of talk through some of the processes around that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a line between drug dealing and ASB, and they can't be seen as the same thing. So there's also the criminal aspect of drug dealing and drug possession, but then there's also all the antisocial behaviour that comes alongside that, whether it be people hanging around or alongside those criminal damage offences, for instance, rowdy behaviour, etc., in the streets. So kind of two-prong attached to that. So the ASB part is generally dealt with through the community protection notice, community protection warning systems with those positive requirements. But then the crime aspect is treated in a normal prosecution manner. Really, some of the kind of challenges we have, which is why people are being seen out and about after being arrested, looking at those lengthy and complex investigations where we may not quite have enough immediately to get a prosecution over the line for CPS, or looking at our ability to influence the court in terms of remand applications, etc. So one of the key pieces of work, as mentioned before, is making sure that each prosecution is backed by a community behaviour order to really make sure that we are still able to enforce some kind of punishment on people should they breach the court orders if they're not remanded into custody.
Thanks, Rob, on those questions. And one thing I do get asked by residents is about what actually caused the spike in drug dealing, and was it something natural? Was it happening across London, or was that something that was very, very sort of specific to Leyton? Dan, would you like to come in on that question?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Kevin. So, as I said in my opening remarks, I think we have to acknowledge that parts of Leyton have faced significant challenges with drug dealing over a prolonged period of time. So the challenges the challenges with drug dealing are not entirely new, but what was really clear was that there was a very sharp increase in the late summer and early autumn of 2023, which was nothing like what the borough Leyton had faced before or what was faced elsewhere in the borough. I don't think there's a single clear-cut explanation for why that sharp increase happened when it did, but I think there are a number of possibilities. One is the emergence of high-potency, highly addictive synthetic opiates, so drugs which mimic the effects of heroin but are synthetic, and they emerged in the drug supply chain around the same time. And there is some anecdotal evidence of users coming in from outside the borough to get drugs, aided by the good transport link connections in the area. I think there are also kind of drug dealing gangs with a footprint in the area, and they've exploited this high quality product to aggressively expand markets, quickly using kind of control over vulnerable individuals and premises to expand their businesses. And it's also possible that dealers and users have exploited a range of environmental factors which enabled them to go about their business. And as John Cryer said, overgrown vegetation, CCTV dark spots, disrepair in estates, those are all, I guess, perhaps environmental factors which enabled that to take root. So I think there's a range of possible explanations, Kevin, but no absolutely clear-cut one.
Thanks, Dan. So another thing that residents do sort of pick up is the correlation between drug activity in the borough and some food venues, and is that something that we've got powers to sort of like look at, or how do we sort of resolve how we look at that, Dan?
So that may be something that Inspector Skingle wants to comment further on. All I would say is if If residents have intelligence to share, which is linking drug dealing to individual premises or to drug dealing around cars where a number plate is visible, please do share those with the police, and we'll make every effort to make sure those are investigated and, where appropriate, enforced against. I don't know if Rob has got anything specific to add about the extent to which there's a link between drug dealing and food venues.
Yeah, nothing overly specific. However, part of our strategies have been linking in with those business owners, reviewing the intelligence that has come through. But then one of the key things is that as part of our neighbourhood policing structure now, we also have a designated licensing and business team. So that those aspects are being reviewed by them in terms of any kind of potential breaches in terms of license conditions, etc., around those food premises, especially the late night refreshments. But also working closely with trading standards, for instance, and making sure that any further intelligence can be gained through visits, etc. But nothing specific to link the drug issue directly to food restaurants.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And Dan, another question that's come in, and that I think the residents are sort of ask about, is about displacement. About, we can drive out drugs in one particular area, but will it just move down to another area? And someone mentioned about cameras being installed, and then drug dealers might sort of might go down on one street, but then that literally moves on to another street. So that idea of displacement is something that I think some residents are very concerned about. And is there anything you can tell us about that, Rob and Dan?
Yeah, so something that is really good from these kind of joint partnership meetings. Obviously, we now have we're all working in partnership really well, but something that we do have in place is some key structures around monitoring ASB and crimes across the whole borough, not just within Leyton. So we do have the structures in place that should there be correlations or displacement into other areas, we can identify those quickly. But in terms of the displacement piece, it's very hard to prove displacement in that it has to be the same individuals and the same offences, and or almost be mirrored in terms of looking at how we previously knew the issues to be. But if we see a rise in other areas, then we now have the structures and practices in place that we can lift those up into the relevant areas.
Thanks, Dan. Do you want to sort of say something from our perspective, from the council perspective?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is a genuine reduction, as opposed to that resulting in significant patterns of displacement into surrounding wards. So the reduction in Leyton and Grove Green wards in reported kind of drug-related issues has been very significant, with only 50 reports in January compared to more than 200 in October. As Rob said, we are monitoring trends in neighbouring wards really, really closely. So across Canhall, Cattle and Leytonstone, there were 28 reports in October, and this rose to 36 in January. So there was a small increase in neighbouring wards, but nothing like the magnitude of the reduction we saw elsewhere. And just to reassure you that as we have in Leyton, we have been doing leaflet distribution, door knocking, we've deployed CCTV, we've had street meetings in surrounding areas. So we are very, very vigilant to that. And the same is true also where we put CCTV in micro hotspots in Leyton. It's really pleasing to hear a resident say those are having an impact. Our CCTV operators are also saying they're having an impact. They're just not picking up any incidents where there are new CCTV cameras put up. And we will constantly review if new micro hotspots are coming up and move where needed our CCTV cameras around. So that just underlines, I guess, the importance of continuing to report problems where you encounter them. Well, I've got the floor, Kevin. I think one one participant has said that the Safe Streets leaflet is new to them and it didn't come through their door. Just to say, we did put those leaflets through every door in Leyton over January and February, and we've also got the details on that leaflet on the website. It's possible that some houses or indeed some roads have been missed. So if your area hasn't been leafleted, if you could just let us know which areas have been missed, and we'll get them re-leafleted. We'll also make sure that we publicise that electronically, because it has some really important information about how to report issues to the police and under which circumstances, what to report to the council and how, and also how to seek support from Change Grow Live.
Thanks, Dan. I think the wider point as well about actually, if you have a feeling, if you do have suspicions, please do report things to the police or to the council as relevant. The police take a lead on crime, we take a lead on ASB, and that's really how some of this works. But I know that there's been a question really about police presence, and I think that's something that residents are very concerned about or would like to see. Kind of questions answered around that. Is there going to be more police presence at night time? Rob, do you want to sort of talk a little bit about some of the policing, the actual practical policing in Leyton around that?
Yeah, definitely. It's obviously I've been around neighbourhood policing within Waltham Forest for just gone up to 2 years now, and there is a obvious change that we are in the process of making, which is a full shift pattern review to make sure that there is coverage moving later into night. I don't know the full details of that yet because it's not been finalised. However, listening to community concerns, as we have done over the last year or so, it's become quite apparent that this is what the community wants. And as such, it's been led by our local Superintendent John, and we will no doubt see the results of that review very shortly, but it will have a positive influence on some policing into the late hours of the morning, early hours of the morning even.
Thanks, Rob, on that. I know that we've got questions about how we sort of notify residents of meetings. We certainly put things on Facebook. We sort of do some. We ask residents to spread the word through WhatsApp, and we do sort of distribute. We put on council channels as well around that. There's a specific question on Sidmouth Park, and this is something that Paul, you might want to sort of come on to that. Sidmouth Park has been a bit of a hot spot, and that's been flagged up to, I'm sure, to John and certainly to me as a councillor as well, and also on the gates around that. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the security around Sidmouth Park? The cameras are there, and when gates are shut.
Of course. So yeah, contractually, the park, all the parks, including Sidmouth Park, should be open dawn till dusk. So they should all be closed before it gets dark. When it's with Sidmouth Park, we have got a couple of new cameras there around the park that are helping us now. Just check to make sure they are being closed every night. I believe they are now, and there's not so much of a problem now. There are the odd day when the vehicle may break down, or there may be traffic delays on there which may delay the closing of some of the parks. But that is very rare now. So with the fact that the CCTV are looking at the gates, it gives us an opportunity to make sure that they are being closed. But it's saying, well, we will go back and make sure that they are being shut every night before it gets dark. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Paul. I think Sidmouth Park is something that does get flagged up, I think, quite a lot. I know that you've certainly cut down some of the growth around it and so forth. So I know we're coming to past, but I think there's a couple more questions. So if we will carry on for a couple more minutes, if that's okay. So looking for some questions. There's a question about regeneration and about how do we involve our regeneration colleagues and partnerships around that, and how do we sort of design out crime as well. So I know, are our constructors, our developers engaged in this, and how do we sort of future plan around some of the big schemes or big things that are going on around Leyton Mills, and other sort of schemes. Dan, do you want to sort of talk a little bit about how we sort of try and look into the future about how we make spaces less hospitable for criminals and criminal crime activity?
Yep, I can certainly start, and Rob may want to add. Well, I think it's fair to say, Kevin, there's really extensive investment and regeneration work underway and planned in the area, including at Coronation Square, the Tube Station, Leyton Mills, and also in the public realm in Leyton town centre. And the council undertakes significant engagement with residents to ensure that we maximise the opportunities here. And we also work with the police designing out crime officer to make sure that we maximise the opportunities around new development and regeneration. The Metropolitan Police employs officers with specific expertise and training in how to make environments hostile to those who want to commit crime, to design out crime, if you will. And they work really closely with developers through the planning process and through regeneration investment to make sure that we maximise the opportunities. And that is definitely happening in terms of investment in Leyton Town Centre, and also planned work around the Tube. Rob, anything you want to add around that?
Nothing specific. I was going to mention the design out crime officers, but you've covered that off quite nicely. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Dan, for this. I think we're just a little bit over 7:30, so I'm going to bring the meeting to a close pretty soon. So I know that we've got a whole range of different activities we're doing, which is there's walk and talk estate inspections. We've got the Grove Green S&T ward meeting. We should have one in Leyton as well. Doing that, and I know L&Q will be keen to do walk and talks as well around this. But John, is there anything else that you'd like to sort of quickly say? I know that you have to dash off as well pretty soon, but let's come.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. There are going to be votes. It's actually on the Rwanda bill, of all things. So they're going to be starting fairly soon, so I'm going to have to go soon anyway. But obviously, a lot of people on the call have been in touch with me, largely by email. If anything happens, let me know. I mean, obviously, I haven't got powers of arrest. But I keep in regular touch with the council and with the police, and always relay people's concerns to the best of my ability. On legislation, I know I said this before, but I think my view would be, and I don't know why the relevant minister didn't accept it, because he's actually quite a bright, capable bloke, but why they didn't accept the amendment on cuckooing, which would have made cuckooing a specific offence in the criminal justice bill. I don't know why they didn't accept that, because I thought that was quite a sensible path to go down. But I'm going to keep plugging away about that, and hopefully at some point that will be accepted.
Thanks, John. So I think we're just going to put the in the chat. We're going to put the link to the community safety newsletter, which we send out on a monthly basis, and so that's really give an update on what we do in terms of the borough and what we're doing in the community safety space. But as I think we're all saying, please do sort of keep on telling us and giving us intelligence that you can, because that's an incredibly important part of how we deal with community safety. And I said there's a strong working partnership between ourselves and the police, and also with other agencies, be that L&Q and Change, Grow, Live as well. Okay, well, I just want to sort of say thank you for everyone for attending tonight. There's going to be a ward panel meeting in April for Grove Green, and a ward panel meeting in April as well for Leyton as well. But the dates will not be it's not yet set right now. However, keep contacting us, and so we'll come back to you and deal with anything that you raise us. If you haven't answered your question, please do sort of email us as well, or do contact us, and actually we'll come back to you with an answer to that. So on that note, if I could say thank you to everybody, and thank you to all our participants who took part as well, and all everybody and for you for top end for our residents for joining. too. And you too. I know, John, you're going to have to race off to a vote right now. But again, if you can, again, thanks you for able to attend as well. Okay, on that note, thank you very much and have a nice evening. Bye.